Max.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can. How are you doing?
Hey, how you doing? What's up?
Another day in paradise. How about yourself?
Another day in hell.
Hey, I can imagine.
Yeah. What's up, dude?
Not too much. I'm very glad that you decided to join me for this.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm glad to talk to people about it, especially people who aren't under social pressure to not talk about it.
I understand fully. I have no bias going into this. I just want to have a little bit of clarification from the man himself.
Sure.
So, how are you feeling tonight?
Things have been rough because I feel as though, every day I kind of live in regret because I feel as though if the initial video that I released was more along the lines of Evidence.zip 3, that combined with the social capital that I used to have, I could have made a huge impact in the direction that I wanted to. But because the initial video was so confusing and dark, I ended up having to do a bunch of damage control after that, and so I never really got to go on the offensive. That's kind of where I stand.
Okay, could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So the initial purpose of the video was to nuke Leffen and explain how he's perpetrating really dangerous shifts in social dynamics within the community, which I provided sufficient evidence for now between Evidence.zip 3 and the most recent video that I just released, the ban appeal video. I've provided evidence for things like harassment campaigns, defamation campaigns, overt acts of manipulation directed toward the entire community, and the corruption of the game's media in order to keep the players brainwashed as to the fact that all of this is happening. Now, the original video that I dropped on this wasn't nearly as concise or descriptive as I just laid it out. I focused way too heavily on things that never should have been focused on too hard. Things like political motivations and psychoanalysis. And so I'm kind of just perpetually judged for that, all because of one bad presentation. That's the way that I see it.
Okay. Um, so that leads into my next question. How have you handled the stress coming from backlash to your Evidence.zip series?
Um, I don't like to say stress in response to the series. I like to say stress in response to specifically number two. Because I think if two was what I wanted it to be, then like I said, I think I would have been living in paradise right now. But I think instead, I'm living in hell, as I said earlier. And I haven't been handling it too well. I'm kind of I've kind of fallen back into like alcohol addiction a bit, and I just feel like I lost a lot of my pride. So I'm trying to keep my head up because I have been here before,
Mm-hmm.
meaning I've been at rock bottom before. My the most notable move of my career was when I remade a new controller to play the game again, and
Okay.
I'm gonna try to do that again here. But it's definitely tough.
Okay. With that in mind, what do you think the path forward to restoring your image is?
Yeah, I've got a few things in mind. For one, I think I need to explain everything that I just told you to the general public.
Okay.
I think people need to know that. Well, I didn't mention this to you yet, but there were factors like trauma involved in my decision to present the facts the way that I did, and then also just like my overly analytical mind in general really hurt me in this situation because it's not appropriate when it comes to politics. You need to be relatable when it comes to politics, and I wasn't relatable in this situation. So those two things really screwed me because from my perspective, the first like when I was making the first video, I actually thought it was fine. But then in retrospect, I can see all the ways in which it wasn't fine. So I understand how I fucked up. And then aside from that, uh then the other thing that I want to do is continue to contribute to the community because like I've explained, I did this for the community. I did this because I fear for the social dynamics that are being developed within the community. And I'm still actively practicing every single day. And so, whether I'm banned or not, what I want to do to remind people of how integral I was is start making educational videos, like the ones that I was
As you
making a
have
lot
been,
of
yeah.
last year. Yeah, I've got tons of stuff like that that I could continue to make. And not only would that show that I'm integral, but it would also provide some more insight into why the first video was presented in the weird way that it was.
Okay. So that brings the question to my mind. What would you do different if you were to be right at the point that you released Evidence.zip 2 again? What would you change about the subject of that video?
I would release Evidence.zip 3.
Okay,
That's
fair enough.
that's all I have to say.
Well, let's
That's all
imagine
I
we
have.
can go back to 2017 and that you have all of the understanding of the Smash community that you have now. How would you
Yeah.
articulate to the community your points and your fears and anxieties about the scene's future?
Well, the whole problem was that Leffen was actively working to cover up Evidence.zip 1, which was a really damning collection of documents. It basically warned people that this was the single highest degree threat within the community, and so that stuff continued afterward. It was largely directed at me because I was the last remaining person to testify, and so that's why Leffen went out of his way to interfere with all my projects. But then, what you saw against Hungrybox in 2018, for example, that was an extension of what got Leffen banned. That same type of behavior, and then the way that Leffen conned the Me Too movement in 2020, again, that's an extension of the same exact behavior. So, me bringing all of this up to the community is almost bound to get me ostracized. It's just, it's like I'm placed in a really unlucky situation where it's hard not to come out with this information without getting ostracized because Leffen managed to become like a lot of people's favorite player and they never really saw this malevolent side, whereas I did. And so just by virtue of coming out with this information, you're like automatically isolating yourself, you know?
Yeah, of course. Nobody likes the person that's dissenting from the norm.
Yep.
All right.
The reason I dissented was because I feared, well, not just feared, but knew that if Leffen continued to acquire followers, that not only would this continue, but people would become increasingly hopeless to stop it. Like, he's at 300,000 followers right now, and he's proven that he's still a sadist and a manipulator, and he's trying to keep the scene in the dark about those things. So my thought process is, well, if he makes it to 500,000 followers or a million followers, then the people who he perpetrates these injustices against are just going to be even more hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a real societal dilemma where the guy is hiding this from people, and if you know what to look for, it's still there. And I'm the only one who knows. I'm the only one who knows the full truth.
Okay. I see. So your fear for the Smash community is that it'll eventually be dissolved through Leffen's actions. Is that correct?
I don't want to say dissolved, but let's put it this way: he can pick a victim on a whim, devise a scheme against them, or manipulate the entire community, and there's realistically nothing being done to hold him accountable. It's practically a cult of it's practically part of his cult of personality at this point.
Okay.
You know, like this whole villain persona actually verges on psychosis. Like,
Well, elaborate
what I
on
mean
that
by
some
that,
more. Yeah.
yeah, it's like it verges on psychosis because if you look at the way that people will generally respond to Leffen being abusive, it's now gotten to the point of worship. Like a good example was when Leffen went after Hitch from the Call of Duty community.
Mm-hmm.
That happened last year, about a year ago, on the
Just
dot.
for anybody that isn't familiar with that, could you give some background on that incident?
Yeah, so Hitch is a Call of Duty player who is generally regarded as a really nice guy, and Leffen went after him for no reason.
Okay.
And influencers like Hugs commented on the situation by like applauding it and encouraging it. They like there was even like a YouTube video Hugs made in which he like supported it. But from my perspective, as someone who knows that Leffen's the same guy who's perpetrating these harassment and defamation campaigns and manipulating the whole community, that's just an extension of the exact same behavior. And then the fact that the influencers are backing it is even more backwards. And it's psychosis. It can be considered psychosis because it's like they became brainwashed into accepting a what's the word here? An eradicated culture. Like the culture has lost its purity.
We've
It's given
experienced a
too.
paradigm shift.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
It's like Leffen's just this evil guy now who has shifted the scene toward these social dynamic shifts that I just named, and everyone is expected to go along with it.
And what do you think that the implications for the scene are from that? I mean, again, you've outlined this in Evidence.zip, but for anybody that may not be fully familiar or didn't take the time to watch the entire series, what do you think the implications of that are?
Potentially very bad because he can realistically continue to select victims and cause extreme damage to their reputations or careers, and influencers will be expected to go along with it. Otherwise, they would risk ostracization themselves. It's like a situation where you become the bad guy by speaking out against it, because what I'm trying to do here is shatter the psychosis, but the psychosis is now so deeply rooted that it's become the norm. Like the perfect example of the psychosis can be seen in the Hungry Box situation, where a baseless defamation campaign is launched against him, and at one point he condemns the community for what was done to him. But I promise you that if Hungrybox spoke out, like if Hungrybox said that Leffen did this to me, I promise you the community would have gaslit him even harder in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's an example of how the social dynamics have truly shifted. It's like if a defamation campaign is launched against you, there's nothing you can do anymore. There's no one to hold this guy accountable anymore.
So, with that in mind, do you think that if Hungrybox had spoken out against Leffen's targeting of him, he would have received a similar treatment that to what you have received over the past few months?
Well, what makes it hard to know for certain is the fact that my first presentation was pretty socially inept. So that clouded things a lot, like I've said. But I do think, because Leffen's narcissistic as fuck, so after perpetrating this type of a smear campaign, if someone were to speak out against him, he would just lie. He would just be like, he would just be condescending toward the guy who accused him of perpetrating it, and he would find some way to manipulate him. He would find some way to manipulate his way out of the situation. And so, yeah, I think Hungrybox potentially would have gotten gaslit even further.
Okay. Well, I've got to ask, do you feel like you said everything that you need to say over the course of your Evidence.zip series? And if not, what can we expect from you in the future?
Well, I'm still practicing every single day, and so even though I'm like ostracized from the scene right now, I mostly just want to be able to come back and I want to get unbanned because the ban is really unjustified because it basically just serves to make it difficult for me to recover my social life at this point, which is unwarranted. Like I had good intentions and I just phrased it the wrong way the first time around. So I want the people who are currently banning me to see that I like was actually working for the community by doing this, despite whatever people may want them to believe. So that's the main thing that I want. I think I need to make a follow up video where where I convey this to the public. I think like public appeal for me right now is really important.
Okay, that leads me to my next question. Some people may argue that you have unfortunately backed yourself into a hole that is irreparable. Do you feel that that is the case, or do you think that there is something in the future that you could do outside of another Evidence.zip video that would prove to the community that you had only their best interest at heart?
I think continuing with an educational series would be
Because
huge.
I got to interject. Everybody loves your educational videos. They're extremely insightful every single time.
Yeah, so I think like this could potentially be another ridiculous comeback story, meaning I'm paralleling this with the initial comeback where I made a new controller just so I could play again. I think this could potentially be similar. Like if I theoretically started doing like educational videos every single week, people would be like, "This is crazy." Maybe it would potentially make people realize in retrospect that there should have been no doubt about me doing what I've been doing for the community.
Well, some people could argue that you may be misconstruing the impact of the implications that you have set forth with your accusations towards Leffen and your ability to produce educational content. How do you feel that those are connected?
Say it again.
So, more or less, some people may misconstrue the fact that you are definitely capable of producing educational content, but they may not be able to buy into all of the statements that you've put forward about Leffen. What would you say to those people?
So I think that's where the public appeal is important. I think I think I need to start by making a video in which I convey why things were phrased the way that they were, and then follow that up with educational videos. I think that's the best route back for me right now because, like I said, I'm pretty socially isolated in terms of the community,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think right now being personable and relatable is really important. And then maybe getting unbanned from my local, nightclub, and then
Yeah.
starting to enter that as a player again. I think that's an important first step.
Okay. So, do you expect the community's perception of you to change in the future? Then, based off of that, do you think that this is a sound strategy for you to reintegrate yourself?
Hard to say. I think it's like I don't think it's guaranteed by any means, no, but I think it could work.
Of course.
I think I'll always be a rogue to some degree from this point on.
Do you think that that may play into your favor the same way that you think that Leffen's community held perception as a villain has helped him?
I think it's my identity from this point on. Is like I'm almost like Sasuke. It's just a matter of being Sasuke while not being banned.
Elaborate that for anybody who may not know.
So it's like I defected from the status quo because I couldn't defend the guy at the helm any further. Like it came before everything else. My need to speak out came before everything else.
See, that's an admirable goal.
Thanks. Yeah, it's almost like I'm a martyr, but at the same time, like the people who see through the evidence, who like see the evidence that I've put forward and put it together and see where I'm coming from, they'll understand at this point. So I don't expect anyone to publicly support me, and I want people to know that whoever talks to me about this, it's confidential, it's between us. I just want people to know why I defected, like in general, and I just want them to know that I want them to feel that it's respectable and understandable.
Okay. Well, with that in mind, M2K actually commented on Evidence.zip 3 and voiced his approval of some of the claims that you made and noticed that you had put forth statements that were warrantable by him. Did that mean anything to you, or was it just, of course?
Yeah, I already knew he was on my side. He sees the merit in what I'm saying, and I can tell you that beyond any reasonable doubt, this is a subject that influencers are being pressured to stay silent about. They don't want to risk their position by going up against the biggest name in the community.
Of course.
So it's like, in principle, there are surely more influencers watching my videos who agree with me, but they they would rather not say anything.
Okay. All right. Um, let's imagine that nothing changes fundamentally. Hacks money is still considered a fringe component of the Smash community, and Leffen reaches that 500,000 follower mark that you were citing. What do you think that the implications for the Smash community will be? Do
So
you
I
think that
think
it
this
will
is
eventually collapse under its own weight? Sorry to interject. Or do you think that it will continue to flourish, even if it's in a less than ideal situation?
I think certain people who get selected as targets will face extreme repercussions, and I think Leffen will be given free reign to engage in however much a moral manipulation of the scene that he wants. And so the scene will witness a permanent shift in social dynamics in which there's no one capable of stopping either of those things. Um, it's not gonna like the thing that's difficult about this is that unless you're in the victim's perspective, it's hard to fully understand how screwed up this is because it's kind of like they're giving free reign to a sadist who is inevitably going to choose more victims until someone puts an end to him. And so it's like the masses will be pressured to not do anything about it, but the victims will face the real repercussions. And it poses an extreme risk to people's career and reputational stability because there's nothing stopping Leffen from picking another victim at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just amoral that he would get on like a Me Too movement and just overtly manipulate the scene or force the scene's media to rewrite history for him. And absolutely nothing is being done to stop this. And there's no denying that that is representative of a societal collapse. Like, from this point on, there's a trajectory of this only getting worse. And so that's why I compared it to totalitarianism, because it's like there are deeply embedded rules within the society that you have to obey and abide by these very abnormal social norms.
Okay. You mentioned a societal collapse. Do you mean like a collapse of the Smash scene?
I just mean that this guy's being given free reign to do whatever he wants and act however maliciously he wants. And
And be devoid of repercussions.
yes,
Okay.
so it may not affect everybody directly, but it will affect certain people, and it will result in the amoral exploitation and manipulation of the community in general.
Okay. Well, at this point, or at least at this current point, it seems that Leffen will not be ostracized for his past actions.
Nope,
How do
he
you feel
will
about
not.
that?
Oh,
And
it's
where do you
fucked.
honestly see the community in 5 years as a result of that fact?
Like I said, 500,000 followers is the next step, and it just becomes more and more hopeless of a situation. Like, there would be nothing stopping him from smear campaigning someone. And, like, if he sees the right opportunity, he'll do it. And so it's just really fucked because you actually become the bad guy by speaking out at this point. Because it's like you're going against a cult. That's how it feels. And so yeah, I don't know. The trajectory is very bad because I can tell you that right now he has friends in high places Like, I don't know if you saw, but Aiden Calvin just tweeted a picture of him with Leffen, and Aiden Calvin works at Summit. So that sheds some light into the fact that Leffen will never be removed from Summit events, for example. So
Hmm.
you see, the guy is openly being allowed to perpetrate actions that would get anyone else banned, but because he's Leffen, it's allowed. And that's a real problem going forward. It sets the precedent that victims of his will be found more guilty than he will himself.
Now, do you feel that Leffen will expand his list of victims rather, to the Guilty Gear scene, the Dragon Ball fighting scene? Do you think that the buck stops in the melee community, or that it's more overarching than that?
Yeah, so I think, for example, he may start like talking shit about some Guilty Gear player at random, and that player would have no choice but to stay silent about it, because otherwise he'll be hit with a huge mob of people ready to defend left and blindly. I think that's the road that we're headed down. And as I've shown you, the influencers will collapse for Leffen because they don't want to lose their spot. So it's like a hopeless trajectory. It's a hopeless trajectory because you're just endlessly handing more and more followers to a sadist and a manipulator who now who should have been stopped back in 2013. But now here we are.
Yeah.
You see where I'm coming from, right? Like, hopefully I've cleared up any idea that I'm just crazy. I don't know. I feel like that's just It's just still, that effect is still there because of the first video. I'll always regret it. I'll always regret it.
Yeah, that's one of the big things that a lot of people have been discussing is they're not exactly sure how Hack's money is supposed to recover from Evidence.zip 1.
You mean two?
Sorry, 2. Excuse me. What do you say to
Well,
those people that
that's
have
where
completely written you off as being mentally ill and incapable of forming a cogent argument?
that's where this upcoming appeal is going to be important because I think people are looking for some type of clarification that there was some type of mental illness involved. So trauma is way different from mental illness because trauma doesn't cloud your ability to think properly, but it does cloud. Um, it makes things dark. It makes you view the person who caused it as being exceptionally evil,
So
and
it
I think
impacts
that
your judgment.
what's up?
It impacts your judgment then.
Yeah,
Okay.
like socially unacceptable stuff, like the way that I included a picture of Hitler. I blame it on trauma. It's like the way I see it, Leffen's the guy who completely eroded the purity of the Smash scene. So when I'm trying to convey a concept like totalitarianism and the Wikipedia page happens to have Hitler in it, it doesn't cross my mind that I should probably remove that picture.
Yeah.
That's because of trauma. And
Okay.
then all the batshit insane stuff where I portrayed him as like an evil mastermind. It's well, I do think that's true, but stuff like like Igami, like that's trauma as well. We
Hmm.
could have done without that too.
Totally.
Yeah, like I learned a lot from this. It's really just a matter of letting me actually recover from it and hearing me out on why it was displayed in the way that it was. It's like a combination of trauma plus my overly analytical self.
Hmm. Okay. Is there
But
anything that you would like to personally clear up? Use this time for that.
yeah, I think from this point on, no matter what I say or do, even if I come back, it's going to be a different hacks. I think it's like at this point, I'm like Sasuke, like I said. Whereas if I won the court of public opinion on the night that I dropped two, like if I dropped three and that video went really well, then I could have been more like Obama. Like it could have theoretically been as though I'd saved the community, but because of the way that 2 was inept, it's like at best I'm more like Sasuke. I'm more like the guy who defected. So this is more than likely a permanent shift in terms of cult of personality. It's it's a big swing in terms of the timeline. But the most I can do at this point is hope to repeal the ban and convey to people why, because of my morals, I had to do what I did.
Okay. That leads me to my next question, actually. Do you feel that given the subject of your videos, your ban was justifiable? Because you used some very, very strong and pointed language, and it did violate the Smash conduct.
Um, if you understand, like, if the TOs theoretically were to fully hear out where I was coming from, then I think I should not be banned at all. I think I should just be let back in and have it accepted as like a big mistake. Because it was done in good faith, as much as it may not have come across that way.
Yeah, it's very clear that
And
you love the Smash community.
yeah, so it's really sad. It's really sad. I'll have to make that clear to people.
Well, all right. If you could change anything in the past few months, I know that we've somewhat covered and touched on this, but if you could change anything over the course of these videos, would you have just used less strong language? Would you have formed maybe a more pointed argument? How would you have gone about it differently with all of the information that you have now?
2 would have been 3. That's it.
Two would have been three? Okay. So you would have laid the groundwork before you revealed all of those realizations that you had had.
Yeah, 3 was a much better video. 3 was like in terms of having the video make sense to the person watching it. Uh, 2 wouldn't have made sense to a lot of people, and so I basically fucked up my whole life by releasing 2.
Okay. I see. Which I have to ask, what have you been doing outside of Melee lately?
Oh, I've actually just been playing Melee every day.
Okay. Do you feel that maybe taking a step back from the scene may allow you to reevaluate and come up with a stronger argument for the future?
No, I think in terms of presenting the argument, it's done. Like in terms of the public eye, I think
Well, in that sense, the big obstacle for you, it seems, is to change the public's perception. So, do you think that maybe taking a break would be the best thing for you, or do you think that that would be out of the that
no,
wouldn't be an option?
I think taking a break would be a bad idea because I think it would cause people to forget about me. Like I think this is a situation where if I'm not actively in the public's eye from this point on, then I think what happens from here is people forget about me, and then it's impossible to come back from. Right now, I'm still like in the public eye because my actions were somewhat recent, and so I think I need to stay in the public eye by doing stuff like releasing the PR video that I mentioned, and then following up with educational content to show people that I'm still actively playing. Like I think it would be impressive to people that like even through a ban, Axe is still doing this.
Yeah, totally.
I think that step is actually necessary.
To show your devotion to the community.
Yeah,
Okay.
because if you have like actively unbanned players watching my videos, that's kind of crazy, right? That kind of shows like something's up here, right? Like if it becomes correct for people to say that we're still watching Hax's videos even though he's banned, that's kind of nuts.
Totally. Well, what should we expect to see from Hacks Money over the next 3 months outside of educational content?
Um, it's mostly three things: PR video, educational content, and then hopefully get unbanned from nightclub because I think that's my way back in is meeting up again with my local scene. That's
Now,
like the first that's the first step.
how big of an I mean, you've been banned from your local, which is obviously bad, but do you still have good relations in that community? Will people speak to you? Do they still see you as the person that you were and that you are?
Well, they see me differently, of course, because of this one thing that I did, but there are quite a few people who still actively talk to me. Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. No, yeah, like the interesting thing about the situation is that it definitely showed me who my true friends were because some people still talk to me actively. And so
Hmm.
it's really interesting to see who sticks with you through this type of thing.
Of course. This has been an incredibly trying time for you, I can only imagine.
Yep. But I've got to try to make it back.
Well, outside of ostracization from the community, do you have any regrets for putting the videos forward outside of maybe Evidence.zip too?
Say it again?
Uh, outside of Evidence.zip 2, do you have any regrets about coming forward with this content?
No, it
Do you
had to be done.
sometimes feel that you could have just stayed silent and remained exactly as you were?
No, I think my well-being was collapsing. Like the turning point was watching Evidence.zip get rewritten. People may view that as being minor, but it's really not. If you think about it, is like watching the media get rewritten to take out victim testimonies when you're one of them and you happen to know everything about what happened there. That's like the tipping point. That's the tipping point for you,
Hmm.
or for me, I should say.
For a while, yeah.
And it's a situation which it's hard to convey to other people, like how why that was the tipping point. Watching Samox get pressure to rewrite metagame
Hmm.
because that's the exact type of thing that absolutely no one other than Leffen would ever be able to do and get away with simultaneously.
Okay.
Just exert extreme social pressure to wipe out victim testimonies so that people don't know about them. That's fucked up. And if you think about it, that's the game's premier filmmaker. That's not just any filmmaker, right? That's the game's premier filmmaker. That's the guy who made the Smash Brothers documentary.
Yeah.
And he's being forced to lie. He's being forced to release propaganda. And I'm the only one who could have told you that. Like, that's actually really bad.
All right. So let's imagine that Hack's Money is welcomed back and allowed into the community at large. Do you feel that you would be able to coexist with Leffen, or Would you be writing this movement until one of you were completely banished from the community?
No, at this point, I don't want to be the bad guy any more than I already am. And it's like, I know that by doing this, I went up against a lot of people's favorite player. And so, and on top of that, I want to fuck the guy up within Melee.
Of course. Don't we
So,
all?
it's, yeah. So it's like, despite the fact that I know he should be banned in principle, I don't want him to be banned. I kind of just want people to know why I defected. And from there, like, we don't need to talk about it. Anyone who talks to me about it, it'll stay confidential. Like, they have my word, it'll stay between us. And that's that. They know why I defected. There was good reason to defect. And so, in terms of what this would look like, I just want people to know that I'm totally staying reasonable.
Okay. Have you considered doing a Q&A session within your own Twitch channel?
Nah, I wouldn't want to do that.
Okay,
I just wouldn't want to.
I understand that. It's definitely, again, probably been a very trying time for you.
Yeah, without a doubt.
All right, that has more or less exhausted most of my questions. Are there any final thoughts that you have?
No, I appreciate the interview.
Yeah, no
You can
problem.
feel free to use this publicly.
Cool.
Fine with
And
me.
if you'd ever be open to another interview in the future, maybe in a month or so after the dust has settled or any major developments have happened, I would love to do that.
Yeah, yeah, we can. Yeah,
All right.
absolutely, actually, because I'm going to follow up with some of these videos and moves that I've explained. So, yeah, we can follow up.
Sounds great. Well, thank you very much, Hax. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Have a wonderful night, man.
All right. See you.
Bye.